Welcome to Unshelved, an episode on banned books and how it's impacting Vermont. Before we get into book banning, let's get an idea of what it's like to be a librarian in Vermont. What do those responsibilities look like?
Library classes for pre-K through 6. And the older grades, I do a bit more like kind of collaboration with teachers when there's a specific need, like how to cite sources, how to tell what a good source is, doing that kind of general research stuff. But then there's also like all of the behind the scenes stuff that librarians do that often people don't always see, and that can be like really practical tasks like covering new books, fixing the catalog, shelving books, organizing the library in a way that is more accessible for kids to find books on their own, doing a lot of collection development, so like looking at what we have in our library and what might be missing, and adding books and resources that not only really just like appeal to kids that we have here and the curriculum, but that also might fill gaps in like diversity and representation and types of experiences that many different people have. And so I'm kind of constantly trying to do all of those things every day.
It got a little cut off, but Rory works with pre-K through 12th grade at our school. Now that we have a better understanding of what her day looks like and what her job consists of, we can go into some basic facts about book banning. The definition of book banning is the practice of prohibiting or restricting the reading and accessibility of books. We've seen book banning predominantly in Texas and Florida for many reasons, the top ones being themes of LGBTQ+ content, sexually explicit content, or explicit language, as well as race. There are many more reasons that you can see using the Books Unbanned page found on the Brooklyn Public Library website. How many books have been challenged? 1,124 books have been challenged between January and August of 2024. How many of these books have been banned in Vermont? I wasn't able to find an exact number of books, but after talking to Arlen, a local librarian, I found out about a law that was passed in the spring of 2024.
Actually, I was at a library conference last week and was learning more about Act 150, which is a new law that was passed last spring by the legislature, and it requires all school boards in Vermont to make sure that their selection and material review policies are updated to include certain criteria that protect access to different ideas more. So it's like a book can't be banned because of the author's political views or religious views or sexual orientation, or the same for any of the characters in the books. So it really makes it so that you can't ban or remove a book from a library for very specific reasons that didn't used to be included.
Thank goodness we live in Vermont.
Yeah. So
I sat down in November of 2024 and discussed many things. Among them, the law passed in Vermont called Act 150. This is a law that means libraries must have clear, non-discriminatory procedures for a book being challenged or removed from the collection. Meaning, books may not be restricted for things such as politics, sexual orientation, race, etc. Our Vermont legislature passed this bill in May when book restrictions were rising nationwide. Lawmakers around the state felt that book challenges are threatening the First Amendment, civil rights, and anti-discrimination laws. Vermont is the third state behind Illinois and California to pass legislation against book banning. I wanted to know more about book banning in a school setting. How do parents challenge a book, and how are librarians handling these challenges? I had the amazing opportunity to connect with Rory Woodard's mom, Lynn Woodard, to discuss what it's like to be a librarian during her time, and I wanted to pull from that interview a story about a parent wanting a book taken out of the library. Here's how that story goes.
I had a family in Middlesex for Rumney School where the mom and I were pretty good friends, and it was a well-educated family, and she had just wanted her sons to read real classics like The Wind in the Willows and Charlotte's Web and things like that. But there they were in a classroom full of kids of many abilities, and I had books for all of those kids. And her son brought, I don't even remember what the book was. Her son brought home something like Aliens Ate My Homework or something like that. And she so did not approve. And she wrote me a long letter saying, why did I have this garbage in my library? And where were my standards and all this stuff? And I had totally forgotten about it until I retired and I was cleaning all my junk out of the library that I'd been living in for 22 years.
Right.
And I found the letter I wrote back to her. And I wish I'd saved it because I was proud of myself when I read it again.
Now, if we were to say that Lynn's book was actually removed from the library, what would that process look like? Fortunately, our Lynn was able to give us a little bit of insight on how that might work. She said that if a parent were to challenge a certain book, it might require going to the school board and explaining why they want this book banned. I decided to dig a little bit deeper into the steps of a book challenge. These steps can and will vary between states, laws, libraries, and settings. But in general, the steps to challenging a book are: let's hope that the person has read the book. 2. Fill out a book challenge form. 3. Explain how and where the book is offensive. 4. Your case is presented to a board. 5. Book is either removed completely or moved to a different section of the library. Again, these laws will vary depending on your state or library, so do your research and make sure that you're informed on what those might look like for you. These steps make it easy to censor an author's story, fiction or nonfiction. Throughout history, book banning has been a means to neglect the stories of those who are in a minority, whether that be race, sexuality, or religion. When we take away the opportunities for others to discover these worlds and find themselves in a book, it prevents them from seeing themselves, leaving us with a white supremacy and a single-minded nation with lesser ideals for those who are different. The future ability for us to get these books is uncertain, and with a rise in book banning and conservative views in politics being a hot topic for many right now, what does the future hold for the authors who strive to write outside norms? Let's take a look. Kevin Roberts, the president of the Heritage Foundation, says the noxious tenets of a critical race theory and gender ideology should be excised from curricula in every public school in the country. This is something that was said in regards to Project 2025, a heavily discussed project that can critically alter the culture and learning of America as we know it today. Let's unpack that sentence. Critical race theory is a set of ideas holding that racial bias is inherent in many parts of Western society, most predominantly in legal and social institutions, on the basis of their having been primarily designed for and implemented by white people. In a basic form, critical race theory is an academic response to white people being colorblind, and that it is recognized that racism is embedded in policies, laws, and institutions upholding and reproducing racial inequalities. Gender ideology is a political attitude regarding the laws and regulations of men and women and sexuality. Most often, it is found to be talked about in terms of trans rights and LGBTQ+ rights across the country, which is brought up often in Project 2025. The plan further extends to familiar titles such as the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan, The Handmaid's Tales by Margaret Atwood, and many more. Books that have been beloved by many readers and adapted to screen and translations, along with many, many more things. These books being challenged is, in simple terms, obnoxious. Banning The Handmaid's Tale, a book about a dystopian society where people are repressed and controlled, is almost like a foreshadow of what Project 2025 can lead to. It feels ever so hypocritical in many ways for many readers. These are just a few of the many stories on the chopping block, after over 2,000 books that are included in the Project 2025 book challenges. You can find this list on various platforms. I accessed one via a link on TikTok that led me to a spreadsheet. I then cross-referenced that with a source online from the Mississippi Free Press. This is also where I got my previous quote from Kevin Roberts. So, to conclude the information I've just thrown at you, books are currently political. They will, and they always have been. This could change if we do something, say something. We have the utter privilege to live in Vermont, a state that's protected our rights to reading and preventing censorship. Those who are not in one of these 3 states are not so lucky, and we should be standing up right alongside them, because even though your books are safe, things can change in a matter of days. We can lose our freedom to read right alongside other states. To stand up for books and authors, contact PEN America. PEN stands for Poets, Essayists, and Novelists. The goal of PEN is to protect freedom and expression throughout America by defending authors and journalists alike. It is composed of writing professionals, journalists, novelists, writers, and devoted readers. They are located in New York City and Washington, D.C., with many offices throughout America. PEN has found over 10,000 book bans in the 2023 to 2024 school year. This far. This number includes titles that may be written in a different language or a different version of the same book. But let that sink in. This number furthers the point that we need to keep ourselves informed and prevent lawmakers and politicians from interfering with our identities and beliefs in an age of what is claimed to be accepting and welcoming to others. The banning of a book that do accept these differences is hypocritical, and we need to be reassessed as a nation. I hope after listening to this episode, you found yourself inspired to stand up for authors and stories you love. Thank you for listening to Unshelved, an episode on book banning and the challenges that it may bring to America and Vermont. I was your host, Shianne Charette, and the sources that I used for the research on this podcast are as follows: Mississippi Free Press, PEN America, American Library Association, Triton College Library, Burlington Free Press, Legal Defense Fund, and thewhitehouse.gov. Thank you to our local librarians, Rory Woodard, Arlen Brucoli, and Lynn Woodard, for helping me bring this podcast to life. In this podcast, there's been a recent book challenge in Middlebury, Vermont, about books being read in a kindergarten classroom regarding books about gender. At the board meeting, parents and community members gave comments against this ban. I highly suggest listening to the video, and it can be found on YouTube under MCTV Vermont. There is also an article on Addison County Independent titled Parents Complain About Gender Curriculum in Kindergarten. Look through both sources to get a better understanding on what is going on over there, and keep yourself updated, and don't be afraid to stand out against these challenges.